The moon hung heavy above the forest of Netheris, casting silver shadows over ancient trees that had stood since before the first vampire ever drew blood. Tonight, a sacred ritual was to unfold, one older than kingdoms, one where fate chose what bloodlines and blades could not. Inside a quiet stone chamber high in the vampire palace, the princess stood before a mirror. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the mask, not to remove it, but to fasten it tighter. The mask was silver, cold, carved with runes no one remembered how to read. It covered half her face, right down the center of her lips, over one eye, and to the curve of her cheek. No one alive had ever seen her true face. Outside, bells tolled slowly. It was time. The choosing rite was about to begin. The princess stepped out into the night, her long crimson cloak trailing behind like liquid shadow. She didn't walk alone. 2 vampire guards flanked her, and behind them trailed the procession of nobles, their jeweled cloaks shimmering under moonlight. At the heart of Moonfall Grove, a circle of champions waited. Shifter warriors, wolves, bears, and even one lone tiger stood in silence, each hoping to be chosen as a sacred mate by the royal vampire bloodline. But one of them didn't stand like the others. Kale of the Ironclaw pack stood at the edge of the circle, arms crossed, head tilted toward the stars. He wore no fine armor, only a thick black cloak of fur and leather, and a single iron fang on a chain around his neck. His hair was long, wild, touched by gray despite his youth, and in his eyes there was a storm held back by silence. He looked up, not at the princess's mask, but straight through it. As she entered the circle, a low wind moved across the grove, whispering through the trees. The ritual began. The vampire guards called each name. One by one, the champions stepped forward with their offers, gifts, blood oaths, promises of protection. Then it was Kale's turn. He stepped into the light slowly, his boots sinking slightly into the moss-covered ground. No weapon, no gift, no kneeling. He placed his palm on the cold stone altar in the center of the circle. "I choose her," he said, voice calm but strong. "Not because I've seen her face, but because I've felt her heart." Gasps echoed from every side. The princess's mask flickered briefly under the moonlight. She didn't move. She didn't speak. But her hand slowly reached up and touched the side of her mask, not to remove it, not yet, just to feel it. A wind swept through the trees again, but colder this time, wilder. The moon above flickered, as if something had stirred beyond it. Kale didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on hers. And for the first time in centuries, the ancient altar cracked down the middle. Somewhere in the distance, something howled. The choosing had been witnessed, not just by the clans, but by something far older than blood. A deep crack ran through the bloodstone altar. Dust rose into the cold air. The choosing rite had been disturbed, and the forest knew it. The princess lowered her hand from her mask. Her chest rose and fell as if something inside her had awakened. The runes on the silver glowed faintly now, like whispers of old magic slipping through the cracks. Kale stood unmoved, his hand still pressed on the altar. He didn't flinch when the guards reached for their blades. He didn't blink when noble vampires began shouting, their fangs glinting like knives. "She is not yours to choose," one snarled. But the princess raised her hand. "Enough," she said, her voice calm but cold. "He has made his choice. Now I make mine." Silence fell like a sword cutting the air. Everyone froze. She stepped forward, slowly, gracefully, until she stood beside Kale. Without a word, she placed her hand on his, both resting on the cracked stone. The runes beneath their fingers flared bright red, then dimmed into nothing. And then she turned and walked away. Kale followed without permission, without escort. Chaos broke out behind them. They moved quickly through the outer woods, where the light of the palace faded. Branches scratched at their cloaks. The air turned colder. Kale said nothing. He could feel her heartbeat through the space between them, fast, trembling, and somehow broken. After hours of walking, They reached the edge of the wildlands. A forgotten ruin stood there, half sunken into the earth, covered in ivy and snow. She stopped. "This is far enough," she said softly. "You shouldn't have come." Cale studied her. "Then why did you walk away?" The princess didn't answer. Instead, she pulled her hood down, revealing dark hair braided with crimson thread. Her mask stayed on. Always. "I warned you," she whispered. "You don't know what I am." "Then tell me." She looked away. The wind picked up, howling through the broken stones. "I was born with a twin," she said, voice low. "But only one of us was supposed to survive. There was a ritual, an old one. It was meant to give power to the royal bloodline." Cale stepped closer. He listened. "But it went wrong," she continued. "My sister didn't die. She lives inside me, beneath this mask. The ritual sealed her there. A curse hidden behind metal." Cale's brow furrowed. "A second soul?" The princess nodded. "A soul full of rage. She whispers to me. Dreams and fire. If this mask breaks, she will come." Cale didn't back away. "Is that why you never show your face?" She gave a small, bitter laugh. "They say I'm cursed. Dangerous. Even my father fears me." He stepped beside her, voice steady. "I don't." She turned her face to him, just enough to let moonlight catch the edge of her eye. "Then you're a fool." "I've been called worse." Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook. A sharp, distant cry echoed from the direction of the palace. A flare of red light lit the sky. "They'd sent hunters," she said, voice turning hard. "We have to move." Cale looked to the trees. "Then lead. I'll follow." She hesitated only a moment, then turned, and together they vanished into the shadowed woods. Behind them, in the dark halls of the palace, the vampire king's voice roared. "Bring her back, dead or masked." The trees thickened as they crossed into the ancient wild. The sun would never rise here. The canopy above blocked out the stars, and the path twisted like it didn't want to be walked. This was the forest of hollow howls. Even the vampire court feared this place. It was said the wind here didn't whisper. It remembered. Cale walked behind the princess, boots crunching dead leaves, ears tuned to every shift in the dark. The silence between them wasn't cold. It was the kind of silence that grows between two people who both carry too many ghosts. The princess's cloak dragged behind her like spilled wine. Her mask glowed faintly, never bright, just enough to remind Cale that the curse wasn't sleeping anymore. Not fully. "What is this place?" Cale asked. She didn't turn. "A prison for lost creatures, spirits that never crossed over, souls that refuse to kneel. My kind call it cursed, and your kind built it." She nodded once. "A long time ago." They walked deeper. The trees grew twisted, branches like fingers, some with bones tangled in their roots. Wind moved through them, but it didn't sound like wind. It sounded like voices. Cale paused, ears sharpening. "Someone's following." "I know," she said, her voice hollow. "They've been with us since the river." He turned but saw nothing. That's when a figure stepped out from the trees. Not a vampire, not a wolf. It was a shade, a preacher of fog and forgotten memory. Its eyes were pits of hunger. It moved without footsteps. Its arms were long, too long, and it reached toward the princess's mask like it recognized it. Cale lunged, drawing his blade from his back in a blink. The steel caught the shade across its neck. But there was no blood, only black smoke. The creature hissed and vanished into mist. Another one appeared. Then another. The princess raised her hand. Her fingers glowed red. The runes on her mask shimmered. "Back," she said. The air around them pulsed. A wave of ancient energy rippled out, and the shade screamed, high, sharp, almost human, before vanishing into the trees. Cale exhaled. "You fought them before." She looked at him. "They're drawn to the mask. They remember what it holds." Cale sheathed his sword. Then we'll keep moving. But she didn't move. Her hand went to the side of her head. What is it? He asked. I heard her. Your sister. She nodded slowly. She's waking faster now. The mask cracked a little during the choosing. I can feel her pulling at me. Cale stepped closer, his voice steady. You're stronger. She didn't answer. They walked again, faster this time. And as the trees grew darker, Cale noticed something strange. The princess wasn't just avoiding the shades. She was afraid of herself. And the deeper they went, the more her voice changed. Just slightly. Lower, sharper. As if something inside her had started walking too. They reached the edge of the forest by dusk. The trees gave way to broken hills and sharp cliffs where the wind never stopped howling. Smoke curled from far-off peaks, wolf territory. Cale stopped and pointed. That ridge. My pack's old hunting grounds. We'll find shelter there. The princess looked toward the jagged hills. Are you sure they'll let us in? He nodded slowly. I saved their lives once. They won't forget that. But memory was a fragile thing. And loyalty? Even weaker. The Ironclaw camp sat deep in a narrow canyon hidden by rocks and guarded by silence. As Cale approached, 2 scouts stepped forward. Their eyes widened at the sight of him. Cale, one whispered, You're alive. He nodded. I need the Alpha. They led him through twisted paths into the heart of the den. Fires burned low. Wolves shifted from human form to beast and back, watching the princess with suspicion. Inside the Alpha's tent sat Jorah, a tall, broad-shouldered wolf with silver streaks in his beard and scars crossing his chest like battle paint. Jorah stood slowly, his voice heavy. You disappeared, Cale, and now you walk in with her. She's under my protection, Cale said. She wears the cursed mask, Jorah growled. That thing draws death, and you bring her here? She's more than the mask, Cale replied. Jorah's eyes narrowed. So you've fallen for her? Cale said nothing. That was answer enough. That night the Ironclaws prepared a feast, but it was only for show. The air was sharp with tension. The princess stayed silent, her cloak wrapped tight, her mask shining in the firelight. Cale sat beside her, but something felt off. Too quiet, too smooth. Then Jorah called for a toast. To our brother's return, he said, lifting a horn of dark wine, and to the end of curses. Cale didn't drink. He stood, and saw it. Too late. 3 wolves surrounded them. One grabbed the princess. Another struck Cale from behind. He hit the ground hard, gasping. His vision blurred. Don't touch her, he roared, trying to rise. But they had already torn the edge of her mask. A thin crack ran down the center. The air dropped in temperature. The princess screamed, not with fear, but rage. Her eyes turned black. The fire went out. And then it began. Shadows burst from her body. Her scream became 2 voices, one hers, one not. Wind howled through the camp like a storm had broken loose from the sky. Wolves collapsed, clutching their heads. Some began to bleed from their eyes. Cale crawled toward her, shouting her name, but her face was hidden in shadow. She had changed. She wasn't just the princess anymore. She was Syrixa, the other soul, the forgotten one, and she was free. Only Cale's voice reached her, faint, weak, but familiar. She froze, then vanished, into smoke, into wind, into nothing. Cale collapsed. Alone. Betrayed. And the mask was broken. Cale woke in the ashes of the Ironclaw camp. Smoke stung his eyes. Bodies lay still around him, some breathing, most not. The sky was gray. The wind was silent. And the princess was gone. He rose slowly, every bone aching, blood running from his side. His cloak was burned. His sword was missing. But his mind was clear. She had changed. She had warned him. And still he had followed her. Now she was lost to something ancient, something broken free. He wandered for 2 days across cold hills, guided only by scraps of memory and the soft echo of her voice inside his head. On the 3rd day, he reached the base of the Bleeding Mountains. Long ago, it was said the gods themselves fought here, staining the stone with their blood. Rivers ran red during storms. Lightning never left the peaks. Here he hoped to find the truth. He climbed for hours, cuts on his hands, frost in his beard. Near the top, he found a narrow cave carved into black rock. Inside waited a fire, and beside it, an oracle. She was blind, her eyes covered in white cloth, but her face was agilous. She wore robes made from raven feathers and bone. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm as snow. "You seek the one who wears 2 souls." Cale didn't answer. "You seek the twin," she continued, "and the truth you were never meant to know." "I need to save her," Cale said. "She doesn't need saving," the oracle replied. "She needs separating." He stepped closer. "How?" The oracle held out a blade made of obsidian, not with steel, but with memory. She pointed to a bowl beside the fire. "Blood is memory. Offer yours, and I will show you." Cale didn't hesitate. He cut his palm and let the blood fall into the bowl. The fire flared blue, and suddenly vision struck him, sharp and fast. He saw 2 baby girls wrapped in black silk, one crying, one silent. He saw a circle of vampire priests chanting by moonlight. He saw the twin who was meant to die, refuse. A deal was made, a life bound to a soul. The stronger sister would take the throne, the other, sealed inside a mask made from cursed silver. Only one could live freely. The other waited for the mask to crack, waited for love to weaken the seal, waited for Cale. He staggered back from the visions, breathing hard. "She's not gone," the oracle whispered. "She's split. One walks with her face, the other sleeps in her bones." "Where is she now?" Cale asked. "The Temple of Veins," the oracle said, "built above the heart of an ancient beast. If you reach her before the full moon, you can bring her back." Cale stood, pain forgotten. "I'll find her," he said. "She will not know you," the oracle warned, "and the one inside hates you most of all." He gripped the blade. "Let her hate me," he said. "I'll still bring her home." Cale stood at the edge of the valley, staring at the path ahead. A black river twisted through the land like a scar, the river of forgotten names. No bridge crossed it. No boat dared float in it. It was said the river remembered every soul who died with pain in their heart. And if you tried to cross it, they remembered you too. But Cale had no choice. The princess, or what was left of her, was beyond it. He stepped into the cold water. At first, nothing happened. Then he heard them. Whispers, soft at first, then sharp. "Traitor. Fool. She will destroy you." The water darkened. Hands, pale broken, reached from beneath the surface, grabbing his legs, pulling. He fought them off, step by step, heart pounding, teeth clenched. Each name they whispered was a wound. But Cale kept moving. Not for himself. For her. He reached the far shore, soaked in death, but breathing. Beyond the river, the land turned red. Veins of glowing rock cut through the earth, pulsing like a heartbeat. The Temple of Veins stood tall at the end of the path, an ancient structure carved into the side of a bleeding mountain. It pulsed with a deep hum, like it was alive. Inside, torches burned with blue flame. And in the center, sitting on a throne of bone and glass, Syrixa. She wore no mask now. She wore the princess's face. But her eyes were not hers. They were darker, emptier, cold as winter's grave. "You came," she said, smiling like ice. Cale stepped forward slowly. "I didn't come for you." "No," she said. "You came for her. But she's gone now." He looked closer. Beneath the surface of her skin, just for a moment, he saw it. A flicker of light. The real princess. still inside, still fighting. She's not gone, Kale said. She's watching, listening, waiting for a reason to take control again. Syrixa stood, her black robes flowing like smoke. She gave up, Syrixa hissed. You saw what they did. Her own people caged her. You couldn't protect her. Why should she return to a world that hates her? Kale drew his blade, black obsidian, gifted by the oracle. Because she's not like you. Syrixa laughed. The temple walls trembled. You think love will save her, she mocked. Love broke the seal. You are the reason I woke. Kale stepped closer, raising the blade. Then I'll undo what I broke. Syrixa charged. Their battle was like thunder. Blade against flame. Shadow against steel. Kale fought with everything. Memories, pain, love. Every strike was a name. Every cut was a promise. Then one perfect opening. He dropped his sword and spoke softly. I see you, he whispered. Not the mask, not the power, just you. Something inside her froze. Syrixa's hands trembled. A scream echoed, two voices clashing. Then a blinding light burst from her chest, throwing Kale back. When he opened his eyes, Syrixa was gone. And the princess, his princess, stood in her place, maskless, tears running down her face. I heard you, she whispered. The princess stood barefoot in the silence of the temple, her silver mask gone, her face revealed for the first time. No longer split between two souls, no longer hiding. Kale watched her carefully. Her hand shook, but her eyes were steady. I don't know who I am without the mask, she whispered. Kale stepped forward. You're the one who chose to fight. Not just the curse, but yourself. Outside, storm clouds gathered. Wind howled across the temple cliffs. The princess turned toward the mountain pass. We have to go back. To the palace? Kale asked. She nodded. To end this. The journey back to Netheris was slow but sharp with purpose. Word of her return spread like wildfire through the vampire lands. Some called her cursed. Others called her reborn. But the vampire king called her a threat. Inside his throne hall, the chandeliers burned crimson. He sat on his high seat of bone, eyes locked on the door. When it opened and she stepped through without her mask, the court gasped. The king rose. You dare walk in without chains? I walk in as myself, she answered. Do you think your face changes what you are? No, she said. But it shows I'm no longer afraid. Kale stood beside her, silent, ready. The king's voice rose like thunder. You brought war upon us. Your bloodline was never meant to survive. You were a vessel, a cage for what should have been destroyed. The princess took a deep breath, and yet I lived. The king lifted his blade. But she didn't flinch. I was born in blood, she said, stepping closer, raised as a weapon, taught to hide. But tonight, I end that cycle. The court watched frozen. Nobles, priests, generals, no one dared move. Kale stepped forward, his voice calm. Strike her down, and your kingdom dies with her. The king snarled. You think love protects her? No, the princess said softly. I protect me. With a sudden sweep of her hand, red light shot from her palm. Pure magic, pure will. It knocked the king backward. He tried to rise. But she was already walking forward, her voice calm, her power steady. You sealed my sister inside me. You locked me in silence. You wore my life like a crown. But you forgot something. She raised her hand. I'm still your daughter. The king froze. For the first time he looked at her, not as a pawn, not as a curse, but as his blood. His voice cracked. You don't have to do this. Yes, she said, I do. With a whisper, the light pulsed again, deep final. The king collapsed to his knees, and the throne cracked down the middle. Later, as dawn touched the palace windows for the first time in years, the princess stood alone in the hall. Her people knelt, not in fear, but in silence. Kale joined her. It's over, he said. She shook her head. No. It's beginning. A silver moon rose high above Netheris, casting its pale light over the ruins of what once was a proud kingdom. The vampire king was gone, his throne shattered. The palace, though still standing, no longer echoed with commands, but with uncertainty. The princess stood on the highest balcony, overlooking her people. The wind tugged gently at her dark hair. Her face, once hidden, now met the world with quiet strength. No more mask, no more shadows. Behind her, Cale approached. He kept his distance, not out of fear, but out of respect. So much had changed. They're afraid of what I'll do next, she said. They're waiting to see who you really are, Cale replied. She turned slightly. And if I don't know yet? Then show them you're still learning, he said. That's more honest than any crown. She looked back at the city. Fires burned in the streets, some out of celebration, others from rebellion, and above them all, the Crimson Order had arrived. Their banners flapped at the horizon, red cloaks, silver blades, riding beasts with eyes like coals. The ancient vampire hunters had returned, drawn by the power that once lived in her mask, and still lingered in her blood. They want me dead, she whispered. They want what they fear, Cale said. You're proof that their laws don't control fate. She stepped forward. I could run. You could. But I won't. She turned to him fully, her voice steady now. I was chosen without being seen, loved without being touched, and hunted before I could speak. But tonight, I choose for myself. She stepped down into the courtyard, where the nobles, the guards, the common folk, all waited. She raised her hands, not in power, but in peace. I am not the girl they seal behind a mask, she said. I am not the weapon forged by fear. I carry two souls, but I walk with one purpose. The Crimson Order reached the palace gates. Their leader, an old warrior with silver eyes, stepped forward. You wear the curse, he said. You bring danger with every breath. The princess replied, Then let me show you what I bring. She pulled a dagger from her belt, Cale's blade, the one made of obsidian. With one clean motion, she cut her palm and let the blood fall onto the stone. It glowed. The earth beneath her feet pulsed with red light, but this time there was no scream, no rage, no curse. Only warmth. Only peace. She whispered ancient words. Her blood seeped into the land. The curse didn't explode. It softened, sinking into the soil. A new pact was made, not of fear, but of choice. The Crimson Order lowered their weapons. Cale moved to her side. You did it. She looked at him with tired eyes, but eyes that no longer ran from the light. No, we did. And under the full moon, where once there was a throne of bone and silence, there now stood a princess and a werewolf, not by law, not by blood, but by love and choice.